Hello everyone, Rider Rated 18 coming back at you with another video. Today we're going to be looking at the Indicator Blu-Ray release for the 1999 film Guest House Paradiso, starring Adrian Edmondson and Rick Mayall. Now, many of you in the UK probably know what this is, but there might be some of you that might not know what this is, and this is basically the feature-length film with the two characters that they created called Richie and Eddie, who were part of the BBC sitcom series Bottom. Now, for a bit of context, Bottom was a BBC Two sitcom that came out in 1991, and Rick and Aid play Richie and Eddie, these two delinquents who have to live together. They hate each other, they're always fighting, they're arguing, bickering, they're beating each other up. There's a lot of toilet humour, a lot of violent slapstick, and a lot of fart jokes and all that. And it was enormously successful. It was one of the most popular sitcoms of the 90s. And they did 3 series of this between 1991 and 1995, as well as some live shows as well. And in between making the show and doing the live shows, they decided to do a feature-length film after the third live show they did in 1997. You know, they got the idea when they were sitting around in hotels, and they thought, wouldn't it be really cool if Richie and Eddie were running the hotel? You know, that would make a good story, and that's how they came up with the idea of this. And also, for a bit of context here as well, this is not technically the same Richie and Eddie from the show, because Rick and Aid have said in interviews that they sort of see this as an alternate universe to the show. Like, you know, it's the same characters, but they are slightly different, and they don't really... they're not really connected to the original series. This is kind of like, you know, them in another universe. So that's probably the best way to look at it. So Guest House Paradiso came out in 1999, and unfortunately I didn't see this at the cinema. I would have been old enough, but for whatever reason I never saw it. I don't know why. It had a very limited run. No one I knew wanted to see it, and I had to wait until it came out on home video, and remember renting it from the video shop and howling with laughter. And it was just so cool to see these characters on the big screen in a feature film doing the stuff that they were doing on TV. And yeah, it was a real thrill. And you know, you'd be talking about it at school and said, "Oh, have you seen Guest House Paradiso? It's so funny." You know, there's all this like weird stuff that happens in it, and a lot of, as I said, a lot of toilet humour, a lot of fart jokes, and a lot of violent humour, and a lot of slapstick, because we don't really get that anymore. So yeah, just a quick context for Indicator Blu-ray. They're very similar to the Criterion collection. I've been collecting them for about 2 years now, and I don't have that many discs of them. I've got about 15 of them at the moment, and hoping to add more to them. And they've got a very deep catalogue, and their spines are quite clean, and they're all spine numbered. As I said, very similar to the Criterion collection, but obviously very different. It's a British-based company. So when Guest House Paradiso came out on their label, I was quite amazed, you know, and it actually turns out this is the Blu-ray premiere for the UK for the film. You know, it was only previously available on DVD and VHS, and happily Indicator got it, and they gave it the full special edition treatment. So let's go through the extras, and there are some good ones on here. So there was an original behind-the-scenes featurette that's about 35 minutes long that was filmed at the time, and I do remember seeing this on... I don't think it was on the VHS of the film. I think there was another VHS release of like the best of Bottom, which was kind of like showing the best bits from the show, some outtakes, and then at the end of it, they showed this behind-the-scenes featurette as a bonus feature on a VHS, and happily that's been ported over to this disc, and it's extremely fascinating. You'll see in interviews with Rick and Aid at the time, and it's worth noting that Aid was actually the director of this, and he's going through a lot of due process and trying to come up with these ideas, and coming up with some real cool movie making techniques, because they only had about £3 million to play with this film, and it's a very cheap film, but it doesn't look it. You know, they made the best of what they had, and sometimes that could be good for a film. If you have a limited budget, you work within your limits. And there's also some on the set interviews with Simon Pegg, because this was his first film. I forget the actress's name. Fenella Fielding, who was in the Carry On films. She was in Carry On Screaming. She's in this as well, and she's interviewed on set, and yeah, it's really fascinating to see everyone working, because this was all done at the old Ealing Studios, and that's a very famous studio that was famous for a lot of black and white films back in the day. And also we see them on location in the Isle of Wight, because that's where all the exterior stuff was done. So yeah, it's a fascinating featurette, and I'm so glad that stuff like this gets ported over, because sometimes it can be forgotten about, or it might not be ported over for various reasons, but happily it's on this Indicator Blu-ray. There is also a brand new interview with Simon Pegg that was recorded for this release in 2024, and he does go into details about how he was so overjoyed to work with his heroes, because he looked up to Rick and Aid. He remembered watching The Young Ones when he was a kid, and watching Bottom, and as Simon was coming up, I think he said... this might have been just before the first series of Spaced, or just after it, because it came out the same year, 1999. And he remembers being very nervous, but once he started chatting to Rick on set, he felt that this was like probably the best gig he's ever going to get. And luckily, he went on to bigger and better things after this. But like I said, it's a good interview, and it's about 11 minutes long. There's also a new interview with the composer, Colin Towns, that's about 16 minutes long. And he goes into a lot of good details about, inspiration for the score and working with Rick and Ade. And I think he worked with them previously on other projects. There's also a new interview with the editor, Sean Barton. That's about 8 minutes long. And again, he goes into a lot of cool details about how the film was put together and in terms of editing techniques and all that. There's also a 17-minute interview with the production designer, Tom Brown. And again, another real fascinating insight. I've never heard of these people, but it's always fascinating to hear their take on movie making. And that's the best thing about these releases. You can learn so much, and it's always fascinating to listen to because they can always bring out some good stories that you might not be aware of. There's also 9 minutes worth of outtakes and bloopers in this, which is just absolutely hilarious. Seeing Rick and Ade screw up, they're effing and swearing, and they're, laughing their heads off at it all, and that's always a pleasure to watch. I think there was a bottom outtakes video that came out. It was called Bottom Fluff, and it was pretty much the same thing. It was like half an hour's worth of Rick and Ade screwing up on the TV show, and this is kind of a similar sort of thing. They're just on set, going through it all, messing up, and it's just nice that we've got a gag reel on this because it's always amusing to watch. There's also 3 theatrical trailers on here. There was I think there was one that was like based on the Eye of the Tiger. It had a kind of sort of Rocky vibe because they were always punching and kicking each other. And there was 2 other trailers which are very different as well. So the marketing for this film is quite interesting when you look at the trailers. So it's nice to have them. There's also a photo gallery with 37 pictures, and that's always nice to see. And finally, we have a booklet which comes with these limited edition indicators, because when the films are released originally, they limit them to about 6,000 copies, and these ones come with a certain box design, and they come with a booklet. And then once those copies are gone, they then reissue it in a more standardized box set without the booklet. So you can still get the film, but it'll be a bit cheaper, and the box will be slightly tweaked in terms of its design. So that's the good thing with Indicator, because when this is brand new, it was about $16.99 what I paid for it, and then when the standard edition comes out, it'll be $9.99. So Indicator's quite an affordable label. They're not too expensive. I mean, they do have some big bulky box sets which can be a bit more expensive, but in terms of singular releases, they're quite affordable and definitely worth the money, because each one is always jam-packed with good stuff like this one is. So if you've never got into Indicator, this is probably a good one to start off with. I think this limited edition is still available. I've still seen some copies in HMV, and there might be some on Amazon. So yeah, if you want to get your hands on it, it's probably still available. And this is spine number 449 and counting. Like Criterion, they like their spine numbers. So yeah, that's my take on the Guest House Paradiso Indicator Blu-ray. Once again, thank you very much for all the kind comments on previous videos. I do like reading the comments, and all the feedback has been very positive, and it's great encouragement, and it encourages me to carry on doing this. So also, don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at rider_rated_18. If you want to be my friend over on Instagram, give me a like, give me a follow, and we could be friends over there. And yeah, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe here on YouTube. And I don't know what the next video will be, but we'll see what happens. So for now, take care, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.